Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of So Zoom In. It's great to have you here. I have written a book with the amazing Susie Bell called A Piece of Me, Finding My Voice After Mormonism, Marriage, Medicine, and Men. It is her memoir and it is good. So definitely be on the lookout for that. I am going to share her links to social media so you can check it out. And today, I am speaking with the talented Chase Dudley. He is a filmmaker who has a new movie out called Broken Innocence. So, welcome, Chase. Hey, Chase
Hey,
Dudley, thank you so much for joining me on So Zoom In. It's great to see you. You know,
thank you.
and happy Friday.
Happy Friday.
Did you have a nice Halloween yesterday?
I did, like it was raining and we took my son trick-or-treating. I'm glad that the rain let up. And it gotten really cold, but he really enjoyed trick-or-treating much more than I thought he was. He wasn't wanting to do the face paint like he did last week, but he still had a great time.
How old is he?
He is 2, he's almost 3.
You're a little, you have to trick or treat. That's awesome. That's so very cool. All right, so cool. Well, you have a lot going on. First of all, there's a lot going on in the world right now. It's like we are on the verge of all kinds of stuff happening. And you, as a filmmaker, you have to be on the edge of everything. It's like you have to be aware of what's happening. You have to kind of like keep everything together too. So I say for a filmmaker, it's a really exciting time, especially as an independent filmmaker. And
Oh yeah.
you do it all. And you have a movie out right now called
Yes.
Broken Innocence. I have to say, I saw the trailer. It looked really scary. I I have a hard time watching scary movies. And here it is, like the perfect time for scary movies. Your subject matter gave me the heebie-jeebies alone. So I have to ask, what inspired you to write that kind of subject?
Well, when I was a teenager, I wasn't even a teen yet. I was 11 years old, and I had a very close friend of mine at the time. I didn't put pieces together then,
Mm,
but I found out after her suicide that she was being sexually abused by her father,
ooh.
and that explained why when I had to go home at night, she was always very adamant about me not leaving her alone. And she was like, my stepfather. And there was signs of abuse. One time I seen her have a busted lip. There was times I seen bruises on her face, and I did not. I think I was too young to realize that she was being sexually abused. But I've learned after the fact that she was being sexually abused, and does that experience always have sat with me. And growing up watching movies about sexual abuse, I tend to think that we focus more on the actual abuse and the sexual trauma of being raped. And this is no way, shape, or form of attack on other people who use or show those things, because everyone has a method to process. But one thing I always felt that was very neglected in storytelling was the PTSD aspect of sexual abuse. The feeling that women or sexual abuse victims go through, whether it's a simple touch that we might not think resonate or is affects people. And that was the thing with Lily. Like every time someone touched her, it goes back to her daddy inappropriately touching her. And we've wanted to enhance more on the sexual abuse, of the psychological aspect of it.
Right. Well, it's so interesting because right now, with all the different dioceses, with these victims coming forward, with years of abuse, and just being able to talk about it, and still people find it they are very put off. Like they don't want to hear it, they don't want to deal with it. Um,
Yeah, I don't think people want to. I didn't mean to overtalk you. I'm sorry.
no,
I don't think people want to believe that these things are happening. There's been talks from people being, as a kid, being sexually abused in Hollywood, and people will call them crazy or dismiss their claims. And now we're finding out that a lot of these things are very much true, and it kind of goes with the same. Um, in sexual abuse in the household. A lot of like it's a 90% ratio of most women who are abused by a close friend or a family member. And no one wants to believe that maybe someone in their family is sinister or, have ill intentions for, but we don't tend to listen to kids who are usually truthful in these matters. Why would a kid lie about these things? And I just don't think we give kids credit enough when they are trying to tell us something that is wrong. I just think we should be open to hearing victims, and often in humanity, as you see with a lot of things, and I mean during human history, we don't listen to it until it's too late.
So which I think I agree with you, but when you wrote this film, did you have a certain message in mind, or were you writing it as part of, because you are the co-writer of the script. Uh,
Yes.
what was that process for you writing something like this, knowing that you wanted a horror thriller, you wanted to stick with the genre, you kept your audience in mind, what
Yes.
was that process for you?
Um, Well, it's more of a psychological thriller. It does. We did have some horror themes, and the horror themes are more of the flashbacks and the PTSD aspect of it. But we wanted to create a character that is relatable for people who are abused to relate to in a way that we cannot see. Because people who don't have PTSD cannot see some of the simple acts that we do that we may not understand what somebody's going through, like a war vet or someone who like a sound, whether it's like a firecracker to someone who is who've been at war, that brings back a very traumatic memory. Well, in this case, with dealing with sexual abuse, like sometimes people who might touch somebody, like sometimes I have to watch my proximity. Like sometimes, like I might pat somebody on the shoulder, and I don't like. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like I didn't mean to do that. And I'm not advocating for Lily to go out and kill people. But what I am trying to say is we don't know what someone else is dealing with. And instead of throwing someone in jail, maybe we should really invest more into like facilities or like ways where people maybe not like when I went back to earlier saying that we shouldn't dismiss somebody's claim, and maybe make it more of a safe environment for people to come out and actually come out and talk about what's going on with them versus coming off like we're victim shaming. Like a lot of women who have been in court who have tried to testify to say that they have been raped or sexually abused or something like that, we tend to well, what was you wearing? Well, why was you in this neighborhood versus focusing on the fact that there is predators and ugly people in this world. I feel like if it was more of a safe haven for people to come out and make these claims, I think we would not have so many people in the dark hiding, who are not coming out because they don't want to feel like they asked for this or victim shamed. Like, and another thing is too, and like, this is something I've really researched that was bizarre. I didn't realize that there's still rape kits since the 70s that still have not been tested. Yes,
What?
there's rape kits that have not been tested that's been collecting dust for almost 50 years. And by the time they even get to it, the person that they even have in custody is not even the person who raped them. So
Wow.
does that make me feel safe to come out if I don't feel like it's going to be treated or taken seriously? I just think there's so many simple things that we can do in this society that make things more transparent for the victim.
Right. Going back to your friend, she ended up committing suicide.
She
Was that
committed
some,
suicide at 14 years old.
how did that make you feel as her friend?
It made me feel horrible that I didn't see the signs, and the fact that her mother didn't believe her and called her a slut for but it was really the other way around. It kind of goes back to when I was saying that there's a lot of times people come out and they speak about things that is happening to them and we don't want to believe, and we rationalize in our head and call somebody a liar or call them, other things, and it's horrible. And imagine if she felt like she had someone that she can go to, or felt safe for that matter, would she have made that decision?
Right.
So I made the story for Lily in the sense of, I mean, I'm glad that she didn't go the route that Lily went, but some people do. And I have researched, I can't remember the lady's name, but she just was pardoned last year. She literally um, stabbed, she was abducted and held captive in some guy's home for like 10 years, and she's killed him in his sleep. And although she was being sexually abused and she was held captive, she was charged for murder. And she was given life for prison. And luckily, this story went viral and there was a lot of pushback. But instead of getting the help that she needed, she was thrown in jail. And it's so bizarre to me.
Right.
I don't know if I think we are lagged. I don't think it's a connection issue. Hello? I think we got a connection problem.
Rose.
Okay, there we go.
There you are.
Okay, didn't know what was going on.
It's like you froze and then the whole thing went dark. And anyway, but
Yeah, I got Spectrum, and it's terrible service. 1 second. I'm trying to like turn on and off my Wi-Fi.
okay. Well, you're back, which is good. Yeah. So
Hey, I just refreshed my Wi-Fi, so let's hope that
that
fixes
works.
the issue.
Well, so I think what's so fascinating as a filmmaker, as a screenwriter, as a creator, you're able to share stories, of the human element, and I think that's a huge responsibility because, you can take it in so many different directions. And even writing genres such as horror, you can still really have a very impactful, powerful message. So I think that's great that you are putting that kind of information out there. What I think is interesting too is how can people change their perception of certain things? Can people actually come to have compassion? Can they come to be more observant based on watching these kind of movies? Do you think that's
I
possible?
ho- I hope so. That's what I'm hoping. I can't, of course. I know for me, I really had to unlearn a lot of stuff that I was taught. I think really kind of dissecting and questioning your moral compass. I think a lot of people have trouble detaching themselves from what they were taught and thinking for themselves. I think that is a very hard thing to do because a lot of stuff that we were taught, religion, a lot of things that we don't realize that really plays a pivotal role into our minds of how we think and how we view as people. There's still a lot of women in the Middle East and parts of the world that don't even have a voice. And it's 2000, almost 2025. And if they speak out, that they're condemned or they're stoned to death or they beheaded. It goes to show you that we have a lot of growing to do in humanity. And that's not a stab or disrespect to people's beliefs or anything, but sometimes what we are told to be, but that the truth is not true. I mean, like it's a really
Right.
critical thing. It's really complex because you can't. I mean, like you can go to certain places and tell them that they're living wrong, and then
Right.
it's really crazy because a lot of people they defend a lot of what they were taught to believe is true, and I
Mhm.
realized the older I get and the more as time go by, it's very hard to have a conversation with people about what is right and wrong because I see it a lot of times on social media. when people speak out, some of the things people lose their platform, people are canceled, people are like hated for speaking their truth. And it's like whatever happened to agree to disagree, or can we have the keep the conversation going? And it's like now, and it's like critical conversation is dying. And I think of John F. Kennedy when he said, once democracy ends, this nation is going to collapse. And I feel that we are really seeing that now, where instead of having a disagreement and having an open discussion about it, it's name calling, or you're a bigot, you're hatred. And it's like we so quick to throw labels and call people names versus really talking about the issue at hand that still remains there. And it's
Right.
like everybody's shouting, nobody wants to listen, but everybody wants to be heard. And it's like, how can you do all three if you're not willing to do one?
Exactly. Well, do you feel that through movies, whether it's on film or, even on social media, do you think that will give people a chance to begin to listen?
I do. I do think art is an expression that do, and especially if you tell a narrative in a way where it's kind of not like where you putting your own bias into it, but you keep the story to the narrative where it starts a conversation where people can see both sides of the argument. I think is very very important. I personally would think that it does, because growing up and watching stories like Apocalypse Now
Mm.
and how it made me feel about war. I think if you look at the Beatles and the movement that they had with peace and rebelling against the Vietnam War, I do believe that art is an expression that can change perspectives.
As a filmmaker, though, it's not an easy task. You,
It's
you
hard.
need money, and that's something that's definitely lacking, and it's really hard to come by. So I know crowdfunding is crucial. It seems especially more so for independent filmmakers. But do you think by having social media that helps you as a filmmaker, or do you think it's harder because there are more people trying to make stuff happen? Or what are
Um,
your thoughts on the evolving?
that is a very great question. But in a nutshell, I think I want to give praise where it's due. I want to thank Abel Berry, who is a phenomenal filmmaker. But he also gives back to filmmakers, and he gives filmmakers like he gives really good advice and tasks to help do crowdfundings and be successful. My very first campaign that I ever tried was in 2016. It was Marvelous Mandy, and it bombed hard because I did not know how to properly reach out to people to ask for. But one thing I've learned during the crowdfunding that he taught me in a lot of ways was people who support you, it is much easier for somebody to give you $20 here and there. Um, and I didn't realize how many people supported me in a way. Because before we shot Broken Innocence, I had financing twice. Branscombe Richmond, he's a phenomenal filmmaker, and he runs the Southern Film Commission. We didn't see eye to eye on how we wanted to make the movie, so I really inclined to opt out. And although he is very successful in Hollywood, we just didn't have the same message of what I wanted to do with the film. And there's no ill feelings there, but it's just so I literally turned to crowdfunding when I didn't know how it was going to go. But honestly, I love crowdfunding. You definitely had some people who really was irritated that you're messaging them and asking for money, and we're in very hard times, so I can understand. There were some people that was very annoyed with me. There was a few people that screenshotted me and blocked me. Look at this guy asking for money. There was a few people who blocked me or blasted me, but there was a lot of people that was like, "Hey, man, I really like what you're trying to do. I really appreciate you." And overall, I would say 85% of that experience was great. No, it's kind of you have to ask yourself, do you want the headache before or after you film? Because if you deal with an investor, and they give you the money, you have to deal with them, and like whether it goes right or wrong, because film is, you never know how it's going to go.
Mm,
And what I love about crowdfunding is like
mm,
shipping out orders, whether it's a DVD or poster or special thanks. Those are a lot easier to pay back versus somebody giving you $100,000 to go make your movie, and then if it don't work, then you're like, "Where's my money?" And you're like, then it feels like the movie Ozark, where you're like, "Oh God, am I gonna die now?"
well,
So
it's so
it
fast. It's so fast because there's so many elements to making a movie. First,
it
you have the
really
script,
is.
and the script just doesn't happen overnight. That's a process, you
It
know.
is a very big process.
And people, I don't think people realize that. It's like, oh, you don't knock out a script in a week.
No.
It's like
Well,
that.
you can, but then you have to ask yourself, is it good? And
Well,
then further question, is it right? And then that process, like I'm glad that I have people like Abel Berry and Jason Horton, people out there who really can give very harsh but honest criticism of, hey, this is good. You might want to go back and rework that. This does not look realistic. Because if you have a bad script, you no matter who you get to act it out. If you have a bad script, an actor can only do so much with a bad script, and you can only do so. It all starts with the writing. So I agree with you.
so talking about the actors, so you have your script done, you have your money, your budget, and
Hmm.
and then you start getting to the actor part. What is that whole process like?
For the most part, I love collaborating with actors, and especially when they are very over to the moon about their role. When I talk to somebody and the conversation is very calm, because I know everybody has different personalities, but when I reach out to people, I am like a 5-year old that
Oh,
just made this drawing. I expect that energy to reciprocate of excitement. So, but some people are just very calm. But that scares me. Like I start kind of, I want to phone the right person, like like because then my ADHD in my mind is spinning, and I'm like, I hope this person is excited because this is my baby, and like I want to make sure that person that gets the part is very excited. And luckily, for the most part, it
mm.
has been that experience. I have talked to a few people where they're just like, okay, I'm like,
Oh.
yeah. I've talked to some people, and I'm just like, this is not a good experience.
All right. So have you had circumstances where you have actors that don't get along or don't pull their weight, or have you?
Oh yeah, I definitely have experienced that in Broken Innocence. I've had that experience with one of my actors where it became it was honestly the worst relationship I've had with actor and director, and literally called I mean, I know I mentioned Abel Berry, but he's like a mentor to me and a really good friend. We've really have so much in common. And I was just like, man, I'm having so much trouble with this person. How do I do it? And he's just like, dude, you're just gonna have to really kill them with kindness. Um, and just really try to, because of course a person can only take so much, and then at some point you're kind of like, am I do I look like a road where you can walk all over me? But one thing I've realized though, but if I was to react the same way that I'm getting treated, then we're gonna really have a. So I really thought his method was really worked really well, where being overly nice really goes a long way. Of like, hey, so I really need you to do this, and it's just like, although in my insides, my pride and my ego is like, no, be mean back, but that is not the best way to be, because at the end of the day, I have my cinematographer there, I have my sound person there, I have a whole other cast. It's not about me,
Mm,
so I have to really work out what's best for the project, and I'm glad that that did go over that, because people starting to see that, and they realize that that person was being very difficult, and that person really has kind of not been as active, and that's kind of beautiful knowing that I reacted the way it should have happened, and just realizing that energy really matters of finding the right person to collaborate with. So, Blood in the Bleachers, I started asking more for references of how people behaved on other sets before they walk on mine.
Mm.
And that really makes a huge difference versus a director really having somebody take over their set. And I've heard some things about directors and screaming and shouting at people, and I don't think that's the best way to handle something. Because when you scream and shout at somebody, you make a person shut down.
Right.
So finding people you gel with, like I gelled with everybody on Blood on the Bleachers. Like it was such a very friendly, fun atmosphere. Everybody was laughing. Everybody was having the best time. Everybody took amazing direction. It was the best experience versus To Broken Innocence. Although I'm glad the film turned out well, dealing with that one actor was one of the worst experience I've ever had. Like, my wife had to check into the ER because her blood pressure was so high because that's the stress of just trying to keep everything together, and then me being on set and then realizing maybe I should be beside my wife in the ER. But we raised money for this Indiegogo project, and we
Mm.
had to film this movie. Otherwise, everybody who just donated their hard-earned money it was a very hard predicament I've ever been in of mentally having to be here when my mind and heart is on my wife and her well-being, and because that's my rock. I don't ever want to be in that kind of predicament ever again.
It's it's a crazy crapshoot, isn't it? Because you want to work with actors, you know what they're doing, and then they all have their personality. And then you put in like 15, 16-hour days, right? Is that about right when you're shooting?
Yeah, Broken Innocence. Yeah, we did some really long days because it was one day that that actress didn't even show up on set, and we had to beg her back. And she's blasting us on social media and saying she doesn't have internet, and, as if I can control it. Uh, and then insulting other cast members and calling my crew amateurs because this person has worked on a much higher production, but this production is significantly less. But like it's like, but these people are very hardworking, and I think the 16 awards around the world at some of the highest film festivals proved that my crew are very hard, and I'm very protective of my crew. They were working longer days than them. They are the first ones on set, and they're usually the last ones to leave. And I just think it's very important for actors or directors. Like I feel very strongly, if a director, you're going to direct actors, take acting classes to understand the actor's process. And I do those things because
Mm.
I understand that the actor is in the merely mercy of putting themselves out there in front of a whole bunch of people. So I think it's really common sense, me as a director, to take acting classes to know the process of an actor. And that's why I love creating characters with the actors. And I feel that I have a very good resume of actors that love working with me. I can provide a lot of them that I work with very often. And I understand that my personality might not match somebody else's, and that's why I think pre-production is very important. But I kind of figured that this was going to be a problem because I was having a very hard time getting hold of this actress before set, and I was starting to kind of worry because we weren't on the same page with the character. And I kind of my gut feeling was like, okay, this is going to be bad. So, and unfortunately, I was right. So like now I'm just like, hey, look, this is my process. It definitely helped me articulate more of what I need up front on my production, because I know some productions a director might not need as much from an actor. Every director is different. But me as a director, I will classify myself as an actor's director, where I love collaborating with the actor of the character. It's a collaboration. It's not my way or the highway. I
Right.
think it is very important to get opinions. Like for my DP, I ask my DP questions all the time. Hey, I think this shot would look great, but you are the director of photography.
Mm.
What do you think this shot would look like if I want X, Y, and Z and all of this stuff? And what I love about Brandon Benz is he is the first cinematographer I've ever worked with that is not above trying something. Because a lot of times with former DPs I've worked with, it was, well, you can't do that, or you're going to need this kind of person for this, this, and this. And I'm just cross eyed and I'm like, uh, and that the DP and director's relationship needs to be very, very like close. Like night. I mean, because this
Mm.
person is articulating my vision to screen,
Right.
and Brandon is literally like my twin brother. We're both bald. We like a lot of people were like, "Man, you guys are like twins on set."
That's
We have the same personality. We can just look at each other and we know what that look means. Like we speak the same language. And I really think it shows in this movie because this movie, compared to my other body of work and Blood in the Bleachers, he was my DP on Blood in the Bleachers. We had such a great time, and it's just I just never looked at anything I've ever done before this project and was just so in love with what I was watching. It was like a love language just being written. Like I was like, man, this is exactly what I wanted in my vision. And it
mm.
really goes to show you when you have the right team, um, you can look like Tom Brady or you can be with the wrong team and you can look like Bryce Young from the Carolina Panthers. And that goes to show you you
Mm.
have to find your tribe in this industry.
Right. You really do. All right. Well, so okay, the post production, people
Hmm.
forget how much of a process that is. That could be even more challenging than the actual film itself.
Yes.
So,
Because I'm
what was
sorry.
that process like for you?
The post production was great because I've mostly dealt with of course the sound, my sound, Ben Hilton, which is amazing. He hands off the sound, which is beautiful because all the sound before Broken Innocence, that is usually the kryptonite for indie films, and usually you can spot a big difference from indie to Hollywood with just the sound because that is something that I think a lot of people think you need a big name, and a lot of times people put a lot of money in front of the camera. I used to do that, and they completely forget about the defense, your crew, and then you really get what you pay for. And you people can't hear your movie, they're going to turn it off. And I would know that because my movie Locked In did not do very well at all because I had the worst sound out of all of my films. And that's where I really almost checked out of filmmaking because I was like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? I'm this is like it was depressing watching everything. You're working long days. You having all of these people here, and then you go to look at this finished product, and you're like, "Oh my god, this sounds horrible." Broken Innocence, it sounded so good. I was hearing some of the. I'm like, wow, this is great. And then my sound design person, Eric Kyra, he takes it and he makes it even sound even more like a studio. Like this movie sounded like a studio produced film, and it felt great. So this post production process was very smooth. And working closely with Brandon, and we going over footage, and we're like, hey, what if we try it this way? And he's just such a master at what he does. And it's so good knowing that there's people out there who really can put the quality into it, and they're doing such a good job. Like now I'm like, I'm gonna do 2 movies a year because like now I'm like, finally, like, because I almost went for quitting because it was like at this point it don't seem like it's getting any easier or better, and it's just like I keep failing and I keep hiring the wrong people, and it's just like, how can I fix that? And like when I was looking for a DP, and there was so many people that recommended Brandon Benz,
Mm.
and when we talked, it was just he was so passionate about what he does. I never met somebody who speaks fluent and fast like me, and we are just like me and him having a conversation over the phone is funny because we're both like
That's exciting.
It is. It really is. But like, but he really cares about what his name is attached to. And
Right.
just seeing these reviews for Broken Innocence, it was made with love, and I'm just glad that I was able to raise enough money to hire people who do this as a job, not as a hobby.
All right, so you have the movie made. Now you have to talk about distribution. There are so many facets to making a movie. People don't realize all the steps you have to go through. And it's like it seems like they keep getting steeper and steeper and steeper. So you have a finished product. Now, what was your process for the distribution?
I tested it into film festivals to see if we would get any bites from studios or other distributions. The distribution I had in mind from the get go, which I end up choosing, and this is the best distributor I think for indie filmmakers, is Indie Rights. Really helps the filmmaker. Linda Nelson and Michael are so amazing, and I wish that because there's a lot of predatory distributors out there, and I don't think we talk about that enough. There's a lot of sharks, and there's a lot of people that don't really care about the fine print in the contract, and they just was like, well, they're going to put my movie on Netflix. Well, they put your movie on Netflix, but they're making all of this money, and on your expense you don't get a dime. You never see a dime of it.
Mm.
Indie rights give you so much information on how to market your film. And between the knowledge between Indy Rice and Abel Berry, I have learned so much more in marketing and really getting my film out there and resonating, and not how to fall flat on your face with marketing, because the business, like you mentioned, and I'm glad that you asked this question, because the business side of film is something that a lot of people don't know, or don't, I think is really, I'm trying to say this in the nice way as possible because I'm not trying to insult anyone.
Right.
But 5 years ago, I was very ignorant, and I made some very dumb promises to investors that was like, now, like hearing my 5-year-old go self, I laugh. Oh, it's gonna be the next Jurassic. It's gonna be the next Quentin Tarantino. It's gonna go to Sundance, and it's gonna get out here, and it's gonna make 20 million. It's gonna make all of this money, and it's like, dude, that was 30 years ago. Nobody is getting those kind of deals anymore. Filmmaking and the business have changed significantly, and it changes so much by the year.
Right.
And a lot of people don't understand the business side, and that's where my wife comes in, because my wife is very business smart. She has a business degree. She knows the residual. She knows the contracts and stuff like that. And a lot of filmmakers don't understand those things, and that's why a lot of times a lot of filmmakers get ripped off, because a lot of predatory distributors count on that.
Right. Well, it seems like when you're an artist, your target, artist meaning filmmaker, fine art, music, if you have any type of creative talent, is like there's that sign. It's like, okay, take advantage of me. And that's
Exactly. I mean, and Prince, literally, I remember the day he wrote "slave" on his forehead, and a lot of people were laughing and thinking that he's this millionaire. And it's like, no. I mean, look at TLC. I mean, they were not millionaires. They filed for bankruptcy, and people were baffled that they were broke. Um, and it happens to so many artists. There's so many people in this industry that are struggling because, unfortunately, the contract, they didn't know it because they speak language that you don't understand.
and what's so interesting, I think, and this kind of ties in when you don't know the market, and you don't know all the steps to it, that leaves you more vulnerable. So when someone approaches you and says, okay, well, if you do this, I'll do that for you. Or, you look at the whole P. Diddy situation going on right now, too. It's like how many people were caught up in, wanting that big break or that big opportunity, but having to pretty much put themselves in situations that were,
That's very compromising. There's a lot of people in Hollywood that is
right.
quiet now, nervous. And I'm so glad that all of this is starting to come to light and being exposed. And I'm really hoping that the old way is long and gone, and there's a new emerge of transparency and people who are more honest. And I think if we would have listened to some of the people who were crying out for help that we didn't want to listen to before, it kind of goes back to what I said earlier. A lot of times people don't want to listen to us too late. I'm really hoping that things change for the better, but always take some business courses, read your contracts, and if you don't understand those contracts, get an attorney. Don't ever sign something you don't know what it is because they use terminologies that confuse people. And Dave Chappelle mentioned that he cannot even legally use the Chappelle Show because it is owned by Comedy Central. He has to go by a whole different name and likeness because he didn't understand those contracts. And sometimes those people in the room with you that's telling you it's a good deal are in on the deal.
Yeah. Well, it was crazy. It's like they say, oh, just sign, just sign, just sign. Otherwise, you won't have this opportunity. You feel vulnerable thinking you want the opportunity. So, of course, you're going to sign. So,
Hmm.
but I think with social media, things are changing, with, just like how we connected on social media,
Social media.
which is so great.
Yeah,
I
it
think
is.
when you have the integrity and the passion for pursuing your talent, I mean, okay, why do you do what you do? Why do you do what you do?
That is a very good question. I don't think I've ever asked why do I spread it's just it's a calling. I love telling stories. Um, I think it's because my most of my life I've been a very misunderstood person, whether it's with family members. I was always the one that everyone always used to make fun of for being weird, or I talk the way I do, and hearing people insult me by, wow, you talk white, you act white. Because I talk intelligent. It's like, wow, you just insulted yourself and you have no idea you did it. Way to go. Congratulations. Um, and a lot of my family members used to tease me and said I act white, and I'm like, what does that even mean? So I've always been popular enough by people where people know who I am, but like I've always been a loner in a sense too, where I was never anyone's first choice to do things. It's a really weird explanation of what I find myself in. I always felt storytelling and watching movies. I identified to fictional characters more than real life people.